Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching. And why am I wearing this fur coat? Not real, by the way. Because Salvador Dali was always over the top, very eccentric, a really interesting character, very talented, by the way. One of the, I would say, the best surrealist painter and author of this book titled The Secret Life of Salvador Dali. So I've been reading this book about him, which he wrote, and right off the bat, once you begin reading, it's very clear that he is showing off his writing skills, because there's a lot of stuff he says I'm like, that could have been written a whole lot simpler and I wouldn't have had to read that sentence 5 times for me to understand what you were saying. But anyway, Salvador Dali was born in 1904 and he died in 1989. He believed his paintings were hand-painted dream photographs. And this is all from the prologue of this book, which is divided in 3 sections. So this video will be about the first section, and then I'll do the 2 other videos after I get done reading that, because I've only read part 1. Yeah, well, in the prologue, at age 6 he wanted to be a cook, he said, and at age 7 he wanted to be Napoleon. So his dreams of grandeur, shifted very quickly. He also said that he would wet his bed till the age of 8 just for sheer fun. He was always dressed in costume as a child and was very, very spoiled. I think the reason why he was very spoiled was because his brother died when he was 7 years old. And the brother died of meningitis. His name was also Salvador Dali. So then the parents went into a very big depression. So Salvador, the first one, died when he was 7, and then 3 years after his death, Salvador Dali, the painter who we all know, was born, and then that brought his parents obviously sheer joy, and they catered to his every whim. It also he talks, and he's very forward about how spoiled he was. He says that one time he wanted candy, and his nurse, how he calls her, but it was like the nanny, finally took him, but the store was closed, so he got a pinned and scratched her face just because he wasn't able to get the candy he wanted because the store was closed. He believes that he was born to rescue painting from the void of modern art. So humility is not his strong suit by any means. In the prologue he says that modesty is not my specialty. So like I said, the book is divided in 3 sections, and we're going to talk about part 1. Part 1 includes chapter 1, and chapter 1 opens with a quote which says, "I know what I eat, I do not know what I do." And he goes on about talking how he only likes to eat things that have a very defined shape, like shellfish, oysters, snails. He hates spinach because it has no defined shape, especially if it's cooked. And he likes shellfish and things like that because they have an armor. And spinach is the opposite of armor. So that's how chapter 1 starts, about why he doesn't eat things that don't have a very strong or defined shape. So all the book is basically just different stories about his life, and they're not in any type of order. They're all over, like when he was young to when he was older and things like that. So that's what basically the book is, just him telling stories that he remembers. And one of the first stories that really kind of perturbed me because it was very evil in a sense. When he was 5 years old, he was pushing this other little boy in a tricycle. So they got to this bridge, and the bridge wasn't completed yet, so it still didn't have the railing. So he pushed the little boy on the tricycle off the bridge. And he says that he remembers feeling no remorse about doing that. Also, when he was in school, he would fall from the top of the stairs and things like that. He did it 2 or 3 times just to get the attention from people. So he was always an attention seeker. So he tells this story when he was in art school, and I'm going to read this straight from the book. It says, "We were assigned to do an original picture in oil for a prize contest in the painting class. I made a wager that I would win the prize by painting a picture without touching my brush on the canvas. I did, in fact, execute it by tossing splashes of paint from a distance of 1 meter, and I succeeded in making a pointillistic picture so accurate in design and color that I was awarded the prize." So he was he was clearly very talented, but also very conceited. But I guess maybe it's not conceited, because if you're good and you're convinced that you're good, why should you be considered conceited, So another thing that happened when he was in school, I guess, he had to do a presentation in front of, I guess, 3 teachers from that school, 3 professors. And when he went in there, and this is from straight from the book, "I am very sorry, but I am infinitely more intelligent than these 3 professors, and I therefore refuse to be examined by them. I know this subject much too well." So I couldn't fathom going into class and have my teacher about to grade me on something and be like, "You know what? I'm not doing this because I'm much too smart for this, or you're inferior to my talent. So that, I guess, took some real cojones for him to do that. Now, chapter 2 is a very interesting chapter. It talks about him having memories of that moment before he was born, like when he was inside his mother's womb. He recalls in there, and then he feels like, as humans, the moment we're born, we are automatically in shock because of that transition from the womb to being brought out. He calls that the traumatism of birth. He says that the inside of the womb are the colors of hell, that is to say red, orange, yellow, and bluish, the color of flames. So he feels that, or he talks about that when you're kids, you tend to like press your eyelids, your fingers onto your eyelids, and you start seeing, colors and shapes like that. And we do that because we're trying to remember the instances or the time, revert back to the time when we were inside our mother's womb. He also feels that people who commit suicide do so because they want to revert back to that time where they were before they were born. I don't know if I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think suicide is more than just reverting back to a time pre-birth. So he says that a lot of things that we do, it's to try and recreate that time when we're in the womb. Like when we go to sleep, we sleep in the fetal position, we have to kind of be covered or things like that. Chapter 4 talks about the false childhood memories, and it's interesting because there's stories in here that you can't really decipher whether it is something that happened or if it's something that he created in his mind. And even he himself, he says that he doesn't know if it's an actual real memory or if it's something that he just made up. But then a part of this book, of this chapter, talks about how he went to public school and not to private school, and this are his thoughts about that. Indeed, I became more and more used to consider myself a rich child, as something precious, delicate, and absolutely different from all the ragged children who surrounded me, as I was the only one to bring hot milk and cocoa, put up in a magnificent thermos, bottled, wrapped in a cloth embroidered with my initials. I alone had an immaculate bandage put on the slightest scratch. I alone wore a sailor suit with insignia embroidered in thick gold on the sleeves and stars on my cap. I alone had hair that was combed 1,000 times and that smelled good of a perfume that must have seemed so troubling to the other children who would take turns coming up to me to get a better sniff of my privileged head. I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously he was very secluded because nobody likes those type of kids, Nobody likes those type of adults even. I had mentioned he was very spoiled. They did everything for him. Here it reads, I couldn't even manage by myself to take off my sailor blouse, which slipped over the head of a few experiments. In this exercise, having convinced me of the danger of dying of suffocation, practical activity was my enemy, and the objects of the external world became beings that were daily more terrifying. So he was even terrified of taking off his own shirt for the fear of suffocation. This is very, very interesting book. There are parts that are written with a lot of fluff, I feel. Besides that, it's very interesting, and he does go off on tangents where I'm like, okay, that was enough of that story, but I think it's just because he was so full of himself. He talks about this childhood friend and how he became jealous when he played with other kids. Like, he wanted everything just for himself and obviously didn't like to share, except with his friend. But then after his friends started kind of ignoring him, he made sure to make him his enemy. So it's either you're with me or against me type of thing. And then the last chapter in the first part is chapter 5. In this chapter he talks about how he's obsessed with the elderly, and he says, I adored 3 things: weakness, old age, and luxury. And like I said, he was always by himself, always alone, didn't have friends, and wanted to keep it that way. Let me read this from the book. It says, in school, my state of mind became aggressive towards anything or anyone who deliberately or otherwise challenged my solitude. The children who ventured to come near me, growing progressively fewer, to be sure, I received with a look and attitude so hateful that I was safe from intrusion during the long recreation periods. From then on, plunged in an untroubled world of my own. So yeah, he didn't want anybody around him or anybody touching him either. This was very interesting about him, and I didn't know, but he claims that French Impressionism was a school of painting that has made the biggest impression on him because it reflected anti-academic and revolutionary aesthetics. So in this chapter, he talks about how he had painted this painting of cherries on an old door. So then a lot of people were kind of amazed by what he had painted at such a young age, and then this guy said that he was a genius, and then left. And Dali heard that. So then after that, he said, I was convinced that I could really achieve extraordinary things, much more extraordinary than that, talking about the cherry painting he did. I was determined to achieve them, and I would at no matter what cost. One day, everyone would be astonished by my art. And he did just that. I'm astonished by his talent. I saw a lot of his paintings at the St. Petersburg Museum in Florida, which has the largest Salvador collection outside of Europe, and I was astonished. It's just completely breathtaking, and he was a genius, and I mean, he believed it at a very young age, and I think that's a very positive message to believe in yourself and work for what you want tirelessly like he did, and at a very young age. It's very impressive to me when someone at a very young age knows exactly what they want. I still don't know exactly what I want, so to me that's a bit commendable and admirable in a sense. So I do recommend that you read this book. Like I said, I'm not done with it yet. I'm barely finished part 1, but go to your favorite bookstore and look for it there, and I'm sure if they don't have it, they can order it, especially at Barnes & Noble. They're really good about that. Or you can order it at Amazon. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Tell me what you think about the stories in here about Salvador Dali. I will be doing, like I said, the other 2 videos about part 2 and 3 of the book. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And until next time, adios y bye.